I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about The Great Silence.
Before we get started next week we're going to be watching The American Friend, a Wim Wenders film. You and I have both only seen one Wim Wenders film before. You've seen Paris, Texas.
That's not true. I've also seen Buena Vista Social Club.
Well, I guess I've also seen Wings of Desire. Okay. So I guess we've each seen two Wim Wenders films, but neither of us have seen.
I've only seen one of his features, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this is going to be an exciting time. I thought I had seen a lot more of his work before. I've seen The Wings of Desire probably three or four times.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you like it so much?
I don't think it's so much that I like it so much. It's just, it's kind of the canon in film. So I saw it in film school and I also saw it when I took a film class at Butler.
You saw it in school.
Yeah. So it's just, it's considered the canon of film of sorts. It's a beautiful film. I thought I had seen a lot more of his work, but according to Letterboxd, I have not. So I'm excited to see something new from him.
hmm
But this week we're talking about The Great Silence. You called this film a spaghetti western, but I always think of a spaghetti western as like an American film shot in Italy, but this is just an Italian western. I mean, is that the same thing?
I don't understand. I thought spaghetti westerns, I thought they're made by Italians. That's the point.
I thought the point was that they were shot in Italy because it was cheaper to shoot in Italy than it was in the US, and it looked like the US.
They're all directed by Italian people, though.
I didn't know if that was the case or not.
Like if you go on The Great Silence right now and look at the crew section, I mean, it's just all Italian people,
Right.
you know?
I mean, this is obviously an Italian film, yeah.
But the cast for all these movies, whether you're talking about Sergio Corbucci's films, who we watched, or Sergio Leone, they have diverse casts. Americans, Italians.
Sure.
Klaus Kinski is in this movie. He's a German guy. So yeah, I see what you mean. But yeah, I think the idea, right, like, is that they're American movies. They take place in America, but they're filmed and made in Italy by Italians. And of course, like they all have like similar stylistic themes and stuff going on as well.
It's a very surreal experience watching a American Western in Italian. I've seen a couple of spaghetti Westerns, but they've all been in English, even if like they were badly dubbed, they were originally made for English.
So one thing I will say is that when I first watched the movie last year, this is a movie that like isn't like very common. It doesn't show up on streaming services too often. So this is the first time I've ever seen it appear like on a streaming service. Criterion has like this nice collection of snow westerns, which is very nice. And when I first watched it about a year ago, it was on the Internet Archive. It was the English dub.
Oh shit. How was that?
I think either way is fine. Whether you're watching it in English, obviously, like in this movie, it's clear that they're talking in English. The actors are.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't expecting it to be an Italian dub. Either way, it's fine. I guess it depends on whether or not you want to read, but it seems like the subtitles matched up with the dialogue being said on screen. So you're not really losing any of the content.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as this movie goes, the dialogue really is second to the visuals, as is the case with every Western. And what beautiful visuals they are, shot in the
It's
middle of
crazy.
winter. It looks freezing cold. Like everyone just looks really cold the entire time.
It's such a good ass looking movie. It's so good.
It's wonderful. It's always snowing wherever they are. They're in like 6 feet of snow. Everyone's covered up in like 20 layers. It takes a while for me to kind of grasp who the different characters are, because I mean, they're literally, from head to toe covered except for
Yeah.
their eyes and maybe their nose.
Yeah. I think they're in Utah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they're in the territory of Utah.
Yeah. I like this movie just because I think the spaghetti westerns, they're like kind of subversive to like westerns before them. I think this movie is even more subversive than other spaghetti westerns in a lot of ways. I really kind of like the just the whole thing with like the economy of like bounty hunting is very interesting to me. I found that very, very neat.
Yeah, this film is a lot darker than I would thought it'd be, and a lot sadder than I thought it would be. It reminds me of A Western I saw a couple of months ago, and I'm on Letterbox right now trying to figure out if I can remember the name of this Western.
This is the one with the Battlestar Galactica actor in it.
The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez.
Yeah,
It has some very similar themes. Also, a very sad film, but this one's just,
this one has a fucked up ending. Yeah,
it's a fucked up ending, and there's no justice in this film at all. It's just shitty people doing shitty things and just having the shittiest of lives. But our hero, El Grande Silencio, the Great Silence,
yeah.
is this classic, superhero esque cowboy who lacks speech but hunts bounty hunters.
He hates those guys. Played by John Louis Trintignant. He's awesome. He died earlier this year. He's in a ton of fucking movies. He was in like Mikhail Haneke movies and stuff like that, and he's great.
Truly spectacular performance and a challenging performance when you're in the bitter cold. And again, you only really see their eyes and nose, and he doesn't talk through the whole film. So, an entirely silent performance, which I imagine is pretty challenging. But nevertheless, you have our great hero
Yeah, he's awesome.
introduced just as the greatest shooter in the West, right?
Yeah, it's like all these spaghetti westerns. It's like the guys, the hero, the lead characters are always like the fastest shooter of all time. But this movie, I think, once again, kind of subverts that later on in the movie, and we'll talk about that, of course.
Mm-hmm. And we're introduced to all of our different characters parts in this. We have the great Silencio, El Grande Silencio, who is shooting down bounty hunter, just doesn't give a fuck. Fastest shooter in the West.
But he has like a code too, though.
He doesn't kill first, right? He waits until someone else pulls out their gun.
So that's in self-defense. Yeah.
So it's entirely legal. So technically, whenever he kills someone, it's never illegal because it's always in self defense. And then we have our group of bounty hunters who are hiding in the mountains because they don't want to be killed or arrested. Because I guess if you're arrested, you're just going to be hanged anyways. So it's not really any different.
They're not bounty hunters. They're the hunted.
That's right. Yes.
They're bandits. But it's like basically a town of people. And they established the fact that like all these people had to steal because they don't have jobs or money. And so they would starve to death. So like all these people have stolen, but they haven't really done anything wrong. But the price on their heads are like thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And of course, you enter with the villain of the movie, played by Klaus Kinski, who is one of the greatest villain actors of all time.
Absolutely.
And Loco is like one of the greatest like villains of all time in a movie. He's incredible.
It's insane.
He's a crazy motherfucker.
I love how they don't give Local any sort of ethics or morals. I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a guy who's in it for the money. Like, there's no justification. There's
like no honor. He has no honor. He doesn't care about anything but money, which is very engaging rather than like a guy like, it's about honor, it's about revenge, it's about this, it's about that. But no, for Loco, it's all about money.
I love it. He just doesn't give a shit. He just does whatever it takes. He has those cold, piercing blue eyes.
Have you ever seen Klaus Kinski in a movie before?
I don't think so. What are some of his more famous performances?
He was in like one of the Sergio Leone movies, like as a villain, but he's mostly famous for like appearing in a bunch of Herzog movies.
Okay. I haven't really been through much of Herzog's filmography, so I don't think so.
Yeah. Kinski, he's so weird looking. Terrible guy, though. Terrible person.
Why is that? Like, in what sense?
He just abused his family a lot. I think he like horribly abused them. He was just like a monstrous individual. Yeah, he was absolutely a fucking terrible person. And even though he was in a lot of Herzog movies, like he worked with him a lot, like I think they also had a tumultuous relationship, a very infamously like bad relationship.
Oh shit.
But he's crazy looking. He's a very weird looking guy.
I mean, he definitely plays the villain very well. He just looks pure evil in every sense. Every look he gives, every disgusting smile, every smirk, all of it is just gross. Like filthy is the only way to describe it. And then we are also introduced to the new sheriff in town. I don't know what happened to the old sheriff. Was he killed? I wasn't sure if that was covered. Who knows?
They need a new sheriff to go out there and find out what the hell is going on. Because there's like a new governor.
Is there a new governor or is there going to be a new governor? Because they keep saying throughout the film, like, The whole thing is the banditos are waiting for the new governor to forgive all of their crimes. So I wasn't sure if the new governor had already like come into office or if he was soon to come into office, but whatever the case, there's a new sheriff in town and he doesn't take shit from anybody.
This character is great.
I love our introduction to the sheriff because it's not your classic sheriff where again, fastest shooter in the West. It's someone who is immediately taken advantage of by the banditos. Like he's just walking around and his on his horse, just trying to get to town. And the bandits come up to him and they got him surrounded. There's like 30 of them, and there's one sheriff. And of course, his gun is frozen solid. He fucked up. But they show that the banditos aren't bad people. They just want to eat his horse, which, I mean, you got to eat what you got to eat.
It also gives them firsthand experiences as to the conditions of their lives at this point.
And the sheriff, he gives in because there's nothing really else for him to do.
That horse in that scene, it really looks like it's having a hard time.
All the horses do. I mean, these horses are struggling.
All these horses have to like trek through like feet of snow. And it's like, wait, I don't think you can do that anymore. It's crazy. I mean, yeah, the horses, they look cold and yeah, they can't like move through the snow. It's scary.
So they take the horse, and we have this wonderful moment where all of our main characters are put in a stagecoach together. We got Loco, our evil villain, the Great Silence, our hero, and the sheriff all in a stagecoach.
The thing about the Great Silence is that like once you watch it, it kind of unlocks stuff for you. I think most people have seen Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. I like Tarantino's movies, but this is another case in which Tarantino has just blatantly like ripped off this movie for that movie,
Which is most of his films.
which, Sergio Corbucci, another movie that he directed quite a few of these movies, but his most famous movie is Django, which is a great movie, by the way. Yeah, Tarantino, he loves Corbucci, and he obviously loves The Great Silence. So, just basically ripping off that movie for The Hateful Eight, which The Hateful Eight is good. It's just when you watch The Great Silence, it definitely like unlocks that for you.
Yeah, most certainly. And I love the stagecoach scene because at this point, we know who all of our characters are. We know their morals, their ethics, their goals, all this sort of thing. And they're all thrown into this space where they're not necessarily,
They can't escape.
yeah, they can't escape. They're not necessarily enemies yet, but they're definitely not friends. You kind of see how they function in this world, and you can see how just absolutely terrible Loco is, just carrying dead bodies on top of a stagecoach.
Yeah, he's like, you gotta put him in a wood or steel and and he's like, whatever, dude.
He doesn't give a shit.
No.
But we see that Loco doesn't give a shit about anyone. He just cares about that cash money.
Yeah.
The sheriff is a big law and order man. He cares less for doing the right thing and more just for following what the law says.
For the most part.
And the Great Silence just doesn't give a shit. He's just doing his thing.
Everybody it's constantly talking about the law, about like what you can and can't do. Because yeah, technically like Loco, like he's like bounty hunting these bandits, but they do have a price on their head. Bounty hunting, I feel like, is a very common thing you've seen Western movies. But in this movie, it's at a scale that is like out of control. Where, like I said earlier, like just tons of people have like bounty on their heads. And as Loco establishes in the movie, he just like kills people.
He just likes to kill people. Like he just enjoys murder.
And like I think it's like they're all dead or alive or whatever. And he's just like, it's too much trouble like to take them alive, so I'm just gonna kill them. And he clearly, yeah, you're right. Like he loves killing people. He loves like torturing people.
That's what's so subversive about this film. Despite the fact that Loco is an insane human being murdering other people, technically from a legal standpoint, he's not in the wrong at almost any
Right.
point in this film. And they make that very clear. Like he's legally doing the right thing. All of these people are dead or alive bandits. He can legally kill all of these people. He's not committing any crimes. And yet, despite the fact that he is legally in the right, it's very clear that he is the worst human being to have ever existed.
Yeah, I mean, he's not doing the right thing.
No, but he's also under the control of, I don't remember the guy's name, but the banker. The guy basically runs the town.
Yeah, like Polycut.
Yeah, Polycut. He's just this miser of a man
like a rich crime boss, essentially. I mean, Loco is obviously the one who's really in charge, but Polycut is rich. And I think he's the one that he keeps getting like robbed, or like stuff keeps getting stolen from people from him, because he's essentially like a monopoly, right? Like he's the richest person in the town and everybody's been run out because they're too poor. Like they go into town and like there's no one there. Like there's no one doing anything like productive. It's just like bounty hunters, Polycut, and some madams. And like that's it. Like there obviously used to be people that lived there, but they've been run out because they were essentially just too poor, is basically why.
Right. It seems to be the case that pretty much all of the husbands have been stealing food to feed their families. And so we're run out of town. And then what few wives are left are either in town or have disappeared entirely. So even though the banker kind of owns the town, there's not really a whole lot to own because there's no one there. There's like a couple people in the bar, some madams, and that's about it. But I wanted to ask you, what exactly is the banker's motivation for the bounty hunter? Like, why is he so adamant about this bounty hunter, doing what he does?
I think maybe just to continue to control the town, maybe just to continue to have a monopoly, and continue to kind of like hoard like supplies and stuff like that, because he has like a little like of shop, right?
Yeah, he owns like the town shop.
But it sounds like no one can afford it. He's also the judge of peace.
Yeah, he does it all.
Oh, actually, and another thing too, he wants their property.
Oh, okay.
That's why they're just trying to run them out of town. Because so they just place like these stupid like price. Once again, it's just like the bounty hunter dead or alive system is like completely like corrupt and like absurd. Because instead of like dead or alive, this guy killed like a bunch of people, get him. Now it's just like this person like stole a little bit of food, and because everybody's kind of like working together to like run these people out of town, it's just kind of like this like absurd structure in which just, yeah, once again, like poor people get like punished, and also like people who aren't willing to maybe stoop to the level of abject violence that the bounty hunters are willing to do.
That makes a lot more sense now. I knew the banker was a bad guy. I knew he was in it for the money, but I wasn't entirely sure of his intentions. But the idea of him wanting all of their land so he can have even more money makes a whole lot of sense. So the banker's talking to the bounty hunter, committing all these crimes, getting people murdered. And while this is going down, Silence himself has been pulled into town by a woman whose husband had been murdered by the bounty hunter, and she wants vengeance. She's pissed. She's gonna do whatever it takes to murder this man. And I believe this is not when we learn how he became the Great Silence, but it's the first time that we see the giant scar across his neck,
Yeah, which is hard.
establishing that he's a mute. It's intense.
Yeah, I think she shows her and she's like, oh, okay. Sorry.
This film is funnier than I thought it would be. Typically when I think of a Western, I don't think of them as very funny, but there's a lot of humorous moments, kind of dry. I wouldn't say like, not like big humor, but there's some pretty silly moments, like when the sheriff, I think, is asleep and he wakes up and there's the corpse right outside his
Yeah.
window, or when the woman keeps yelling at him, and of course he's a mute. And a lot of just like little things, like they're kind of just these throwaway little moments. There's no like big comedic moments. I wouldn't say this is a funny film. It's pretty dark and sad, but it's got his moments.
Especially with the sheriff. The sheriff is kind of like affable. When he talks to like Loco and everybody, he's like so smarmy about them because he like does not like them at all, and he thinks that they're crooks, but he can't really outright do anything. So he kind of just like kind of makes fun of them, kind of pokes at them, which I like.
Yeah, the sheriff is wonderful. And this is when we learn how the Great Silence became the Great Silence, a dream sequence of sorts. The Great Silence is like falling asleep. And just a really depressing way of becoming a mute.
Yeah, it's fucked up. Which, by the way, I do find this origin a little bit flawed, but it's okay because it is very hard and it's very great. But I don't know. There are other ways to communicate that, like how and who killed your parents besides talking. Like, I don't think you necessarily need your voice to be able to identify people. It would make more sense if they're just like, fuck it, kill the kid, whatever. Like, that's just my opinion, but it's still hard. Like, it's still like really like because he has the big scar in his neck, and like he doesn't talk at all throughout the movie, and that's why he hates bounty hunters because they killed his parents. So yeah.
It's a pretty tough scene. I mean, these bounty hunters just go in, murder his dad, murder his mom for no reason, and then decide to not kill him, but cut out his vocal cords. I think it would have been a little more interesting as if they had tried to kill him and he just survived. Because how does one cut one's neck and not kill them? Like, that's got to be an expert cut.
Or just like maybe like a cut that wasn't very deep or something. Yeah, it's like I guess I don't know the physiology behind like our vocal cords. Like where are they? Like
I have no idea how that works.
I feel like, yeah, there's something off, but I get the idea. I get it. He can't talk. He can't talk because of bounty hunters. That's why I get him. I get it.
So we're learning about him. The sheriff finally confronts Loco and the piece of justice. And he's like, I'm not going to do this shit. Like, you can't just pay this guy to just murder people. He's going to go on an investigation. He's going to investigate these people, make sure these things actually happened. And so he goes and tries to find the wife. And while he's looking for the wife, he runs into the Great Silence. And the Great Silence is shooting up potatoes. He's throwing potatoes into the air.
Yeah, he's epic. He's super good at shooting.
And they have a little pissing contest where they each, throw up a potato and they cut in half and all that sort of thing. Classic Western moment. You have to have it.
Yeah, you have to have some shit like that. Yeah. Yeah. To once again, yeah, establish the fact that, yeah, he's really good at shooting his gun.
But he's got this weird mechanical gun. Like, it's very strange looking.
Yeah, it's cool.
Almost science fiction looking. Do they ever give a reason why he uses that specific type of gun? I don't think that they do.
He just likes it. He can shoot really fast with it. It's like not a revolver, so he can shoot faster, I guess.
It's a cool looking gun. But while they're doing this, the wife needs $1,000 because she's poor and she has to pay the Great Silence because he's got to make his money too. He's got to make his living.
She like insists to pay him, yeah.
But the only way she can pay him is by selling her house, which means she has to go to the banker. And the banker
likes her a lot.
Yeah. He's got some rapey feelings towards her.
He wants to rape her.
He wants to rape her. That's kind of his thing.
Yeah, like she shows up and he's basically like, I'll just give you the $1,000, but you could like he's just insinuating that if you have sex with me, I'll just give you $1,000. And she's like, no. She's like, fuck you.
Gross,
so
man.
that doesn't work. You think you'd be like, ooh, more property for me, very nice. But I guess it doesn't matter.
Because he wants that sweet, sweet sex. He's got to have it.
Yeah, he's special.
And our villain, Loco, is warned by the banker that the fastest shooter in the West is here.
Yeah, he's going to fucking shoot you.
But unfortunately, he can only shoot him if it's in self-defense because he's got those morals, he's got those ethics, he's got a...
Right, Loco is a great villain because, he's like he's pretty smart. He's not really stupid. That's a great bar scene where they're playing poker and Silence shows up. And he's kind of egging him on. He's like throwing like his match and then his cigar into his drink, which is great. And then like he's like, I know what you're trying to do. I'm not stupid. You're trying to get me to shoot at you, but I'm not going to do that. But they do have a fight.
There's a real fisticuffs. And he does murder everyone else in the room.
Right, Silence, he kills all of his buddies. Yeah.
Because they pull out their guns. So he just nails them. He just nails them all to smithereens. But unfortunately, Loco he's too smart. He's a clever villain, and he refuses to play Loco's game, even when they go hand to hand.
And he gets arrested too. I think Loco also gets arrested.
He gets arrested because they're fighting, and at the last moment, Loco almost grabs for his gun. He's close, and if he had just grabbed it, Great Silence could have killed him. It would all have been over. But right before he grabs it,
yeah, the sheriff insists on arresting him. Yeah,
he shoots the gun away. Classic Western move.
Yep.
And arrests him for something. I don't remember why he arrests. I guess attempted murder.
I think, yeah, he was about to shoot his gun. So he's like, I saw it. You're going to jail. And he arrests him and stuff. And I like the part where he's like in jail and they're talking and stuff. There is that one scene where he tries to punch Loco, the sheriff does, and he just hits the jail door and he's like, fuck. And then right after that, Hollycut comes in with some goons and they're like, we want him back. And he's like, nope, fuck you. He's going to jail. And it's like, okay, the movie is like, things are starting to get a little bit better. Okay, like they arrested Loco, the sheriff is kind of cool. Like he's kind of defying like all of these like really powerful and fucked up and violent people. I think right after that too, like Silence and Pauline. Yeah, Silence and Pauline, they have sex. great, whatever. They did it.
Very tasteful.
Yeah, it's pretty tasteful test sex scene. It's not like it's fine, I guess. It's a spaghetti western. It's an Italian movie, so and things are on the up and up. And then I think the sheriff now, which is kind of ridiculous that he's doing this, but the sheriff by himself has to transport Loco very far to a jail. So they have to do a lot of trekking in the snow on horseback.
Because there's no jail in town. He's got to, again, he's a law and order man. He's got to run the law correctly. So he's got to get this guy back. And there's no deputies. It's just him. It's just him, the sheriff. He should have deputized Silence or somebody.
Someone, yeah.
Anybody. But the banker pretends to be all distressed because the bandits are going to come down and they're going to create havoc. And
because the other thing the sheriff does is that he's like, we need to gather a bunch of food and have them invite these bandits back into town, because obviously they're not bandits, they're just like regular people. So he's like, yeah, we need to gather a bunch of food and have them come into the town so they can eat, because they're starving in the snow, in the mountains. He's doing the right thing. He's trying to distribute goods and stuff to the people that need it, when before I think it was just being hoarded and just wherever, I guess. It's yeah, everything is kind of okay, things are improving a little bit in town, in Snow Hills or whatever it's called.
Snow Hill, yeah.
And then he has to transport him to the jail.
So of course, immediately upon transport, they run into the banditos.
Right.
And Loco is like, you need to uncuff me. I need to kill all of these people. I need to save you.
Yeah, I need to save you. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell if he actually does feel that way about them. I don't think he actually does, right? He doesn't actually he kind of just is I think he just has to continue to pretend that they're a danger, right?
I think he's playing a role.
Yeah, but he doesn't actually think they're a danger. He knows that it's bullshit.
Yeah, I don't think the bounty killer really gives a shit about anybody. I think he's just really good at playing the role of the bounty hunter who's saving lives, getting the bad guys. I don't think he has any sort of morals or ethics, because as we see very early in the movie, he's willing to drag people by their necks via a whip.
Yeah, he'll torture people, just outright shoot people in the face. He's such a good ass villain.
Great villain. But the sheriff informs the banditos that there is food at the edge of town and you should go get it. I'm surprised that the bandits don't send a scout out first, or maybe just one or two guys to make sure everything's go. They just all go at once, which I guess
when they get there, I guess it's okay. I guess they're maybe think oh, Loco is getting out of town, which means that it's safer. So he's going to go to the jail.
I guess that's true. So they're thinking it's all going to be okay. They go their separate ways. And Loco's escape plan is he has at some point in time buried a series of guns on these trails.
They kind of do it a little bit where he's just he's traveling in the carriage and he tells them to stop.
Yeah.
And he's like, I buried a body right here.
Yeah.
That I wanted to get later. So I think they established the fact that he knows the area well. So he kind of knows where things are hidden that he hid under the snow, and it works in his favor here. He's like, I have to poop.
That's his plan. So the sheriff gives him his space, and of course, Loco has hidden a rifle of some kind in the snow.
Yeah.
And instead of shooting the sheriff directly, he shoots the ice below the sheriff.
It's like a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon.
Which made me think for the rest of the film, and I was kind of hoping this would happen, but it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe that's why they put that in there. He doesn't shoot him outright just to make you think that oh, he's gonna come back, right?
That would be the classic Western thing to do. They pretend to kill this guy, but he somehow survives and comes back and kills all the bad guys. But that's not what happens. The sheriff never comes back. He dies in this terrible fashion, and that's just the end of it. There's no satisfying ending for the sheriff, right? He never gets his justice. He never gets what he came out there for.
I'm remembering something. Do you know this movie has a couple alternate endings?
Really?
And there's a happy ending in which, yeah, the sheriff does come back. And he kills Loco.
I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it sounds satisfying, but
I like the official ending more. They also had an ambiguous ending.
What happens in the ambiguous ending?
The ending depicts Silence being shot by Loco's henchman in both of his hands before he can draw his gun. Wounded, he collapses on the ground as Pauline watches in shock. Appearing to show a change of heart, Loco gestures to his men to leave the saloon. As a result, the fates of Silence, Pauline, and the outlaws are left unknown. That's kind of a very lame ending. I would not have wanted to.
I'm glad they didn't go with that ending. That ending doesn't make any sense. Why would Loco do that?
Exactly. It's just, he was obliged to make a couple endings. Corbucci, I guess. But anyway, before we get to the end, Loco kills him, and he's able to swiftly get to town after having basically killed the sheriff. And yeah, like we said, we maybe think that the sheriff is going to be back, but maybe not. They're back in town, and now Loco and his buddies are like, all right, round up the bandits and let's fucking get Silence.
We gotta murder him.
And there's an attempt made by Polycut and his henchmen
to murder Silencio and also rape Paulina. Another horrific scene. The banker's just the worst person in the world.
Well, and then also out of nowhere, we get the fucking like background on the banker.
The backstory.
The backstory.
I did not expect that.
I didn't. I kind of forgot about that when I watched it again. I was like, oh fuck, that's right. He doesn't have like a thumb, and like as he's trying to rape Pauline, you get a flashback of Silence as an adult killing the bandits that killed his parents. But instead of killing Polycut, who was a guy that was there when his parents got killed, he just shoots his like thumb or thumbs off or something like that. And he's like, for shooting off my thumbs, get this. And they like burn the fuck out of his hand. They put his hand in like hot coals.
What a cringeworthy scene. I mean, just
Yeah,
watching
it
him like
sucks.
scream in silence and his hand over those hot coals. Oof. Oof.
Yeah. And it's super sad because basically like he's done, right? He's able to overpower the henchmen and they're able to kill him and Polycut before Polycut does anything drastic. But basically from that point forward, Silence is basically like disabled. Like he can't shoot a gun.
It is not the direction I expected this film to go in at all. Of course, classic Western. Now you got your good guy, your bad guy. They're going back and forth, and you have that final.
And you know that at the end, they're going to shoot at each other. Yeah, they're going to shoot at each other. They're both the fastest guns in the West. And now you get the scene at the end where they shoot at each other. That scene is kind of here, but it's like not really the same at all.
It's a little mind-boggling, and as you have pointed out many times, it's very subversive, because if there's one thing you know about a Western is they're going to have that shootout. You may have never seen a Western your entire life, but you know that they got to have that shootout. And now that his hand is injured, you're like, fuck, how are they? I'm still waiting for the shootout at this point. I'm like, they're going to have the shootout. Like you can't have a Western and not have a shootout. That's just not possible.
They definitely shoot some things.
Things are definitely shot.
Like for some reason, Silence, even though he's completely fucked up, he's a man of his word and honor. He goes out to the saloon where all the bandits are. He's like outside of the saloon. And once again, just to kind of like throw salt in it, once again, these bounty hunters, like they don't really like care about having like a stupid like shootout, right? They don't take any risk. There's like a guy with a rifle that just shoots his hands, even though like his hand is already burned. They're just like, I'm gonna shoot his hands.
Well, they shot his other hand.
Which is insane. You don't really see that in Westerns where someone just kind of like, let's make for sure that he can't shoot his gun. Let's 100% make sure that he can't shoot his gun. And once that happens, you're just like, he's not going to be able to do anything. And yeah, like he just gets domed. He just gets shot at.
Yeah, because one of the big things about pretty much all Westerns is this idea of honor, both good guys and bad guys, right? There's this certain ethic, there's these moral codes that everyone lives by.
At least in the universe of like Western movies.
Exactly. Even the evilest of men has a one-on-one with the good guy, because that's basically the laws of the land. Like there's certain ways this world works and exists. And so, of course, you expect and you hope and desire almost this one-on-one interaction. And even Loco promises that. That's why Silencio goes out there in the first place. He's like, I'm going to murder all these people if you don't do a classic Western one-on-one with me. And Pauline's like, this is clearly a trap. Like, it's very obvious that this is a trap. He's just going to murder you.
Well, he's the most evil person of all time.
Like, he doesn't give a shit. He has no honor. He has no ethics. But Silencio, he's like, I got to do it. Like, I can't, if I don't go out here, all these people are going to die. And he's a good man at heart. So he goes out there, and as you say,
they just like kick him in the stomach. Like he can't even shoot when he gets there, and he can't even shoot even more like right when he gets there. It's just like, I don't know, there's something like yeah, when he's like looking at his hands and they're all bloody and stuff, like he's just destroyed even before. And it sucks because he's such a badass, and you want him to like kill all these people, but Loco and all his buddies are just willing to do more depraved acts of violence.
An awful and depressing scene. And in a certain way, you could describe it as anticlimactic, because you've been waiting this whole film for this great shootout, for this moment where the two finally go up against each other, and Silence doesn't even get a shot at it. He's already got a hand that's ruined. And the moment he walks basically into town, they fuck up his other hand and he's just killed. Like, that's it.
And then Pauline is killed just outright, like no moment. I think she tries to pick up her gun to shoot at him, but there's just no chance. And then they all turn around, and of course, they do what you basically expect them to do, even though it's still like pretty amazing, where they just kill all the people in the saloon.
They just murder everyone.
They just murder everyone, and they're just like, yeah, whatever.
It's awful.
And it's just like, yeah, that whole part of the movie, the whole ending is just one of the greatest, craziest endings of all time. It is just like, it's really unexpected when you see it for the first time because it's just so dark and it is so like pessimistic, and I'm sure you could read into a little bit more when you're talking about like politics, whether in Italy or the United States, in terms of like how the hero prevailing isn't necessarily what has happened in history, right? Like eventually those who have the most resources and money and who are also willing to do vehemently violent acts eventually is able to crush people who do have like good intentions and good like ideas, whether it be giving food to people or not doing crazy fucked up like bounty hunting shit like this, or just like everybody has like a bounty on their head. Once again, it's just so interesting, like the economy of like the bounty hunting and these people who are just like getting paid off of just like violence, just out of control, unnecessary violence. It's just so good.
It's an incredibly powerful ending, contemplating the systematic oppression of both the United States and, of course, Italy. You can't count Italy out, even though it is a film that takes place in America, quote unquote, and it's about a bunch of Americans. It is at its core an Italian film, and there is a lot to be said for the Italian government, which in 1968 or before or since hasn't been the greatest. So you can definitely see that frustration expressed in that film, in which just the shittiest people, merely because they have the power, merely because they are willing to commit these acts of violence, climb to the top. And there's no sort of justice. There's no logic. There's no reason. They're just willing to do literally anything for that.
It's like the most realistic Western ever. I imagine situations like this end the way that this movie ends.
So is this based off of a real thing that happened? Because there's like that.
Probably not like bar for bar, you know what I mean, with all the
Sure,
different,
right.
but I'm sure like situations like this probably did happen in the United States, right? Because it's like, I think bounty hunting is still a thing. Obviously at one point people were like, maybe we shouldn't do dead or alive bounty hunter. Like that's kind of fucked up, right? Like why would we want a dead guy? We want the guy to be alive, you know? So I think like, yeah, like bounty hunting is still a thing, but yeah, I think it probably had to reach like an absurd level, like in The Great Silence, in order for people to be like, that's bad. That's really bad. We should stop doing that.
Yeah. What a depressing film. But
It's so fucking good, dude.
oh, so fucking good.
And once again, like, and we talked a little bit about it. I love the snowy setting. It's such a good setting. It's real. It really is. They're out there. I like a nice, like, sweaty, sunny, kind of dusty Western, but I think that the snow Western is like very underrated. I think there's a lot you can do with like visual wise of like, people kind of like riding horses on just like mountains and plains of just like snow, I don't know what's more difficult, like extreme snowy weather or extreme like, summer wet weather. I don't know. It's like, I think either way, it's difficult. And I think just like it's just a really badass setting. It's like perfect for this movie and this story.
Yeah, I don't think this film could take place in any other time other than the middle of the winter. Just the juxtaposition of this extremely white snow and all of our characters who are almost all wearing completely black is beautiful and terrifying. And the score of this film is wonderful.
Yeah, Morricone score, like it's obviously good.
It's got all those kind of classic Western motifs to it. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Once Upon a Time in the West. Very similar score to Once Upon a Time in the West.
I watched that movie for the first time semi recently, and both those movies are very similar. I think they have similar they have sort of similar endings. They kind of have similar like ideas. They both have kind of like really like get into kind of like their like respective like economies. They're both very similar, but of course very different. And I would say that Once Upon a Time in the West and this movie are like maybe head to head in terms of like the best spaghetti western I've seen, probably.
Up there. These are some of the greats.
If you like this movie, everyone should watch Django. Same director, yeah. He made way more movies too than Leone. I think Leone made like 6 or 7 or 8, and this guy made like dozens.
Awesome.
They're not all westerns, obviously. Italian movie directors, they direct all kinds of different genre movies around this time. So he's got like action movies and like I think science fiction movies and stuff like that. So, but Django's really good. Django's like really like violent. It's very violent. This movie's very violent too. But Django's like a really like dirty, dusty, kind of blood caked movie. It's really good.
Definitely a lot more to explore. What a wonderful film. All right. Should I go first or do you want to go first?
That's fine.
For which one?
Oh, you can go first.
This film, as I hope I've made clear, is a spectacular film. It is beautiful. It is extremely well written. It is depressing. The score is magnificent. Everyone in it is so dirty and grimy and disgusting and filthy. There's nothing bad that I can say about this film. From the moment it started to the moment it ended, I was absolutely in love with this film. And I am partial to the Western, so I guess one should take that into account. If I see a Western, I'm probably going to fall in love with it because it's just one of my favorite genres. There's just something magical about it. But at each and every turn, it moved in directions that I did not expect. It was a very subversive film. It played on the heartstrings in a lot of different ways, and just such a depressing ending. And I could not have enjoyed it more. So I'm going to give this film a 9 out of 10.
That's right. Me too. Great movie. Like I said, I think it's up there with one of my favorite spaghetti westerns, if not my favorite. And it's just got like I said, great ending, great characters. Just like any spaghetti western, it's violent, it's tough to watch, and like I said, I really like the snowy location. It looks real. It looks very, very real, and yeah, I think I've said what I wanted to say about its qualities. It's just like a really devastating film, and it almost kind of feels like the conclusion of the western genre almost. Obviously, like there have been plenty of good westerns that have been made since like the late 1960s, but I don't know, this one just kind of like for some reason there's something about it that just feels very like putting a stamp on it, like this is the end of the West. They even talk about earlier in the movie too, right? Like we have to stop all this like bandit, bounty hunter, cowboy shit. If you were to make like a history of like the Western from its beginnings up until the spaghetti Western era, like this would be like the last movie you would watch, I think.
Yeah, there's something thematic about the ending. It feels as if the Western has come full circle. Very powerful.
Yeah, rocks.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. You can find everything I do at AustinLugo12.
You can find me on Twitter at ADHarp24. I'm also on Letterboxd, Retro Andrew, RETR0 Andrew.
And you can find this podcast wherever you hear podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Theater42. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much.